going to share a little bit about my experience in being this wonderful man's wife and how we met. I was a student at St. Joseph's and he was a resident. And we dated casually. In fact, the first time I went out with him anywhere, he was going to take me to Piedmont Park to watch the kids play baseball. And he asked me very politely if there's any place else I'd rather go. And I said, well, actually, my mother had major surgery and she's at DeKalb Medical Center, now Emory DeCare Hospital. And I haven't had a chance to go see her. And he said, well, come on, I'll take you. So we got to the hospital and we went up to the room and I opened the door and my mother was lying there, tubes, IV, definitely medicated. And I said, Mom, and my father was there too, I'd like you to meet Dr. Joseph Moussakhani. And my mother pushed herself up on her elbow and said, my daughter's not getting married till she's 30 years old. And with that, he said, ma'am, you're a very wise woman. And then he went out and he sat down on the floor next to the door of the hospital room, and I visited with my mom a little bit, and then he took me back to the hospital. And he was definitely different than what I had seen in the hospital. A lot of the doctors had what I call the doctor complex. They expected people to just kind of make a clear path for them and to wait on them, and just their egos were definitely up there. Joe was different. He spoke to everybody in the hospital. It didn't matter whether the person was cleaning the hospital, fixing the food in the cafeteria, a nurse, head of staff, they all got a greeting from him. And he valued people in every position that they held. And that was so different. I was really taken by that. Also in the delivery room, he was so kind to his patients. And sometimes the clinic was quite large, the OB clinic. And being a resident, he was doing a lot of deliveries with the OB clinic. And sometimes they would have 3 patients almost ready to deliver, and the rooms were being used. So obviously they had to turn those rooms around very quickly. And most of the doctors would say, well, call me when you have my patient in there. But he would get the mop and start cleaning the floor and help the nurses clean the room. And to speed things up afterwards, they'd bring the cart in for the patient to get onto. And the doctor would usually say, okay, honey, scoot your hips over. Come on, we're going to put you in the stretcher and take you to your room. But Joe would just pick them up and put them on the stretcher. We got married in 1965, and like my son said, we spent the first year in Canada. And when we came back, a year later, we had a month-old son. And we stayed with my parents for a few weeks, and then we found an apartment. And we hadn't had our first anniversary yet. It was right about the time we had our first anniversary. And Joe said, oh, my cousin Eddie's coming. And I said, oh, from California? Well, he's from Iran, but he's visiting in California. So he came, and a week later, I asked Joe, I said, well, what are Eddie's plans? And he said, well, he's going to Georgia State. Didn't I tell you? And Eddie was a very bright guy, and he had an interesting story that he worked for 10 years after high school until his 10-year-old twin brothers graduated, and he took care of his family. So this was his opportunity, and Joe said, come on to Atlanta. We'll take care of you. So he stayed with us, I think, 6 years. Now, this was my cross-cultural experience that I was living. And that was hard. When he first came, it was really hard. I had a new baby, and my baby and Eddie were roommates. It made nighttime feeding, I'd have to go out in the living room for that. know the Lord at this time. It was some years later that I came to know the Lord as my personal Savior. But I had a deep desire I believed in God, and I had a deep desire to honor Him. And in my mind came the thought, which is greater, your dislike for the situation or your love for your husband? And it wasn't even a close contest. So I learned to love Eddie as my brother, and we still have contact with him. He's a father of 2 grown young men, and very happily married, and very prosperous with that education that he got in the West Coast. And after he left, his older brother's son wanted to come over and go to school. So we had Saroj come and live with us for 3 years. And Joe, this was not what I was used to. My mom came from a big family, but our family in Atlanta, we didn't entertain a whole lot. We didn't have a lot of people coming to stay. If somebody stayed for 3 days, that was a long visit. And but we ended up having a lot of family and some friends and all come, and Joe had the gift of hospitality, and I had the gift of Joe. So it all worked out. But through the years, I have learned to love that part of him, and just love the people that came and stayed with us, and felt blessed for every single one who's come through our doors. And Joe was a remarkable guy, and his family came first. When he decided to quit his practice and retire, he made the comment that my patients have needed me, and I love my patients, but he said, I think my grandkids need me more. And he just loved his retirement. He loved being with the kids and the grandkids. Every one of our grandkids learned their fruits and vegetables going to the farmer's market with us every week. When they were in the cart, and he pointed out every single thing from dragon fruit to star fruit to pomegranates, and they would say, well, what does it taste like? And he would say, well, let's get a couple and take them home, and we'll see how they taste. He was a guy who loved to learn new things. His latest thing that he did was to watch YouTube and see how people fillet fish all over the world. And he would say, come watch this for a minute. Look, this is so cool. This guy, his skills are awesome with a knife. And I would say, I really don't want to watch this. But I won't make this any longer, but just to say that I'm going to miss my best friend and my sweetheart of 54 years. But when I look at my children, I see him. And I see the investment that he made in their lives, and how they love him, and the kind of parents that they have become to their kids. And I'm so grateful to God, and so grateful for this family that I have.